Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Let My People Vote is a riveting short documentary exposing the harsh voter suppression laws that prohibit 6.1 million Americans from voting. This is crazy, right, Nancy?
That's an awful lot of people who aren't allowed to vote.
Exactly.
I think it might even change the results of an election sometime.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
This award-winning film is new. It's becoming a rallying call for youth to participate in the midterm elections. We just finished watching it. It is very effective and eye-opening, and we're really happy to have film director Gilda-ann-Brasch of Los Angeles-based vusi-filmworks join us here on Big Blend Radio today. And I encourage you to go to the website, letmypeoplevotemovie.com. You can view the trailer and also go there to schedule a screening. Welcome, Gilda. How are you?
Good, thank you. And thank you for having me, Lisa and Nancy.
Hey, we're super glad you're here. I know it's really interesting, all the different things you've covered in your career. And some of them, it's like, okay, we're going to do, love and hip hop, and then also Let My People Vote. I know you've also worked with Oprah Winfrey on her special Building a Dream over in South Africa, which is a place we lived in for very many years. And so we've got a lot of connections, that and national parks. I know you love national parks like we do, but what led you to create Let My People Vote?
Well, that's a good question. As 2016 elections were approaching, the presidential election between Trump and Clinton, I just started doing some reading about voting. I'm not quite sure how I got to it, but I came upon an article that I was so surprised that in 2013, the Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, had basically ruled that racial inequality did not exist so much in this country as it did in the 60s, when Martin Luther King worked with President Johnson to pass the Voting Rights Act. And in 2013, in that 5-4 Supreme Court decision, they basically gutted key provisions of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And as Representative John Lewis, awesome man, one of my heroes, his quote on that I like to share is that the Supreme Court stuck a dagger through the Voting Rights Act. And then we are now in 2016, and we're having the first presidential election without the full protections of the VRA. And I just happened to get this idea, I want to go out to some polling places, and I want to see, does it have an effect? I had no idea what I would find.
Mm-hmm. And so you went to Florida, right? And this is where watching this gentleman, Mr. Meade, and you connected with him and filmed what he was doing, and he's got an incredible story. And he really is he shows that you never quit for what you believe in, right? Just how,
yes, exactly.
Desmond Meade, everyone. So this was in Tampa, right?
Yes, this is in Tampa. So we chose the state of Florida because knowing that it's basically the biggest swing state. Which way it goes absolutely decides an election, and it's going to be the same way in 2020. In fact, Florida now is going to get 2 more electoral votes. It's going to go up from 29 to 31. They're going to have more power than the state of New York in this next election, presidential election in 2020. So we chose to go there in 2016. And you just mentioned Desmond Meade. He is the president of the Florida Rights Restoration Committee and Coalition, I think it is actually, FRRC. You can look them up online. And he is himself a returned citizen or an ex-felon. And in Florida, no matter what you get a felony for, and here's the crazy thing, it can be for really what we would think would be minor things. Once you are convicted of that felony, you will never vote in Florida for the rest of your life. Now, that doesn't mean that you've even been incarcerated. And the example in the film is a gentleman, an older gentleman, who got a felony violation because he drove with a suspended license. But I mean, in terms of, it just kind of, he didn't serve any time for that, and he got his driver's license back. But that happened, at the time of the film, that happened some 23 years ago. And the gentleman still couldn't cast a vote in the presidential election or any election in Florida.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.
And didn't this also happen in Maryland as well, where if you were convicted but you're returned citizen, which means that part is over. You are back in society. It's already hard enough going from that to trying to get, a career started and get a job and, start your life anew. And then, to me, that's like taking your breathing, your birthright away. If you're a citizen of this country and you are working and doing, adding to, this country, you should be allowed to vote. Otherwise, if you're, why did they let people come back into society if they weren't allowed to do the most fundamental thing that we should be allowed to do?
Yes, no, absolutely. It is a basic civil and human right. And, listen, I'm a white lady. I'm from the beach in California, and this basically woke me to so many issues, because I realized after a little while, like, wow, if it was me, I never would have had that felony conviction on my record. I would have gotten a great lawyer, and I would have, spent the money because it would have been expensive, but I would have had that charge reduced to a misdemeanor. And therefore, I could vote. But as, Mr. Mead explains in our film, poor people can't necessarily afford the lawyer and all the fees. So they take the plea bargain. And as soon as you take the plea bargain, you're convicted, you have a record, and then your rights are taken away. So it really is aimed at, a certain economic class too, that this whole thing is going on.
Wow.
This is really, really crazy. And my mind goes to all the people who have been convicted of felony charges and put in jail, and later on they're released and found innocent because of the processing of DNA now. I mean, so half the time that people going to prison don't even belong there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And those are for, obviously, if they're looking at your DNA, those are for allegations that are much more serious than driving with a suspended license. But as we point out in the film, if you burn a tire in public in Florida, that is a third-degree felony conviction. You're not going to serve any time, but it's a felony. If you think you're a nice person and a sea turtle egg falls out of the nest and you put it back, if you're seen doing that, that is a third-degree felony. If you buy somebody 10 Mylar birthday balloons at the dollar store and you let them go in the air and a policeman sees you and wants to write you up, that is a felony conviction. So all of these,
I know, what the heck?
Seriously.
Wow. Yeah, that's one of the things. I don't know if you saw the graphic in the film with that map of Florida with all those statutes flying at you. Those are all third-degree felonies if you are so convicted. So, and that's the other thing. People may not understand that by taking the plea bargain, it's like, okay, I burned a tire in public. I'm not going to go to jail for it. All right, I don't have the money right now for a lawyer, and I'll just plead guilty. So people may not realize that that is going to take your vote away.
I wonder if it's even pointed out to them when they're making these choices. If, the government tells them, by the way, if you accept this plea bargain, you will not be allowed to vote ever.
Right.
Well, I wonder if they even do that, or do they sign something that,
that's a good question. That would be something we would have to ask Mr. Mead about, or one of the members of the FRRC. I don't know, but even and what goes with your voting rights, that's taken away. Also, in the case of Desmond Mead in the film, he actually earned a law degree since he completed and served his sentence and all parole and everything. He completed a law degree, but he cannot practice law in the state of Florida.
But he's completed a law degree and he cannot practice law and he can't
Right.
vote.
Right.
So
That's kind of like a package. It's like a package deal of rights that they're going to strip from you. They're going to take your vote away. They're not going to let you practice law, and they're not going to let you run for office. Now, if Desmond was in Georgia, he could practice law.
And this is an important thing too, because he didn't move. He said he decided, I'm staying in Florida. You know, this is his state. This is my home, and you don't just pick up your toys and leave every time it gets difficult. And I really have such huge respect for him of, hey, I'm going to stand up and do something. If I can't vote, I'm going to get people to vote. Like, I'm going to do something about this. And I think that he really is this just guiding example of so many people that do pick up and do things correctly, do stand up and say, hey, we need to change this. Hey, I can still make a difference. And I think sometimes the people making these laws don't think people like Mr. Mead exist. You know,
no, I don't think so. And, you know, I mean, that is the, to me, you know, I just so admire the role of the activist. Mm-hmm. You know, somebody who just keeps walking the walk because they feel called to do so at great sacrifice to themselves.
Absolutely. Is there a way to, I mean, I look at what's happening now, even in the Supreme Court, and is there a way to change this law? Because I know with Maryland and I know Baltimore, they can now vote. And I think they were able to turn this. So can this be turned over when we look at, you know, upcoming elections?
Well, I certainly hope so, but it's not moving in that direction at all. So first, let me just explain one thing in terms of how this whole thing started with the taking the vote away. It goes back to the Jim Crow laws after the Civil War. This was a law that's basically been on the books in many states, particularly the South, since like 1865. So that was another thing that opened my eyes. I was just like, wow, we still have basically systemic racism embedded into our laws today from the end of the Civil War. And so now, flash forward 150 years later, it's actually getting worse and worse. Not only is this law going on in Florida and in 2 other states that completely disenfranchises ex-felons, and when we say ex-felons, again, we're not even talking about these are crimes that people committed that they didn't necessarily serve time for. It doesn't, and so what's going on today is I guess it wasn't last month now, in June 11th and June 24th, I think it was, the Supreme Court handed down 2 more really key decisions, both 5-4 decisions again, and they ruled in the state of Ohio that the state of Ohio can purge voters if they missed voting in an election. So that means, I was out of the country traveling, or I didn't really think the midterms were important, or I had a doctor's appointment and I couldn't get off work that day, so I missed my midterm election. Then you are purged from Ohio's voting rolls. So what do? They mail you a postcard that you might think is junk mail. And if you don't mail that postcard back and say, yes, I still live here and I want to vote, then you are wiped out. So then you may show up for your next election and you're no longer there. Whoa. So anyone that's listening that's in the state of Ohio, make sure that you are still on the roster. Then in June, they also ruled in another 5-4 Supreme Court decision that it was legal for Texas to gerrymander the districts. And that decision was another shocking one because, I mean, we know Texas is pretty conservative, but even their state judge said that the gerrymandering was extremely biased against minorities. Yet the Supreme Court overruled it. So what's going to happen? Other states that want to go in that direction, depending on what, I guess party controls that state, they're going to say, oh, well, Ohio said you could purge. Oh, they said we could gerrymander in Texas. So this is just going to be a really terrible snowball that's starting.
Wow. So we really have to, and I think people also need to understand the importance of midterm elections as well. And any local election, all of them, they all count. And that's the thing. Watching those pieces of paper, I think this is so important what you're doing, and like your film is just, it's short and it gets right to the point and it's undeniable what's going on. But we have to take action and be aware and share this information. I think that's one of the beauties of documentaries is, this is a way for people to see what's going on and to share it beyond what we always see maybe on TV. There's or everybody can, say this news channel doesn't do their job. Everybody's fighting over who's a legit news channel. Watch a documentary then and share it around. But it is I think things like that do creep in. There's even just as business owners, there's changes in laws all the time, but it's not like the government sends you a booklet of changes. It's like suddenly, the wages changed. Did you know? So there's not really an effective communication system between what's happening legally and what's happening with citizens, I don't think, in general.
Well, yes, and that's why, it's very important for people to stay up on the news and relevant articles, and we try to help you with that with voting rights on our website, the letmypeoplevotemovie.com, and remember, you got to put movie at the end of Let My People Vote. Letmypeoplevotemovie.com. We have a tab on there that's I think it says Voting Rights Watch, and I've posted articles about all these Supreme Court decisions that have come down that may affect you. And one of the really great writers on all of this, many articles I've posted from him, is Ari Berman from Mother Jones Magazine. He's been in this sector for years and years, has a great book called Give Us the Ballot, and really was one of the inspirations for me to go out and do this work.
And I want to give a shout out too. Can we give a shout out to Moby? Because
absolutely.
This Wild Darkness, and it's from his latest album, Everything Was Beautiful and Nothing Hurt. So he donated this to the movie soundtrack, right?
Yes, he's allowing us to use it at the end of the film during the credits, and it's just such a beautiful and positive and moving piece that he recorded with a full gospel choir.
He's awesome. I love Moby. Yeah, he's pretty radical too, man. He's an activist for sure. So
yes, absolutely. He is another person that definitely stands up.
Yeah, for sure. And it does. It takes cojones, But this is the thing. I feel like it's. I have this suppression that we're doing. This. People have a right to live in this country and breathe and be as successful as they want. And when you can't vote, it's taking away so much of how we live, quality of life. It is just such a really big deal. I want everybody to see this movie. And so Let My People Vote. You can go to letmypeoplevotemovie.com. What's the best way for them to be able to see it?
Well, if you happen to be in Atlanta, we are going to be at the Bronze Lens Film Festival at the end of the month. It starts August 22nd. So there will be screenings at the Bronze Lens Festival in Atlanta. And then in September, we're going to be screening in Seattle. One of our partners is the Levi Strauss Foundation. They are absolutely wonderful in working on things that have to do with voting rights. So I am only going to buy Levi's jeans from now on.
That's right. Hey, and shout out to them because they got started in Encinitas, California. Check it out. They're cool.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's wonderful.
Surfing history, yeah. Surfing town. I love Encinitas.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Anyway. Yeah, so this is Seattle that you're going to be in?
Yeah, so we'll be screening in Seattle in September. And then what we're going to be trying to do is to start basically a university campus tour and an HBCU tour, after school starts again next month up till the end of voting registration, which I think is October 6th for the midterm elections. And we're hoping to screen the film at campuses But if people really want to arrange some other sort of a private screening, they can write to us on the contact form on the website.
Excellent, excellent. So everyone, it's letmypeoplevotemovie.com. We were also very lucky to see the trailer of Selma. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, well, that little short demo piece on Selma it's not released yet. It's really a concept reel, but we just went down to Selma in December during the Roy Moore-Doug Jones election. And the press was there from all over the world. It was really amazing. I think we got the last rental car in Birmingham Airport. And most people were headed towards those two campaigns to see who was going to win, the horse race. And we were like, no, let's go down to Selma. Let's see what's going down there. I've never been to Selma. So then we just rolled into town, and it was the day of the election, and it was the last few hours that the polls were open. So we headed to a polling place at a YMCA, and we just hung out in the parking lot, and we talked to people as they were coming out. And Selma is part of what's called the Black Belt of Alabama, so named due to its rich soil. And as we came out, it was definitely a minority population, but we asked people, so how did that go? And we were really shocked to hear that so many people had to work so hard to get a vote cast that day. Their district and their polling place had been moved. Sometimes for these people, like 3 times, they were run here, there, and everywhere all over the county to try to cast a vote until they finally arrived at, like, say, the YMCA, where their name was actually on the list. So then when the results came in and Doug Jones won, and they credited it by a very, very narrow margin of, you probably read about it in the press, of the African American women basically pushing him over the top. Well, our film shows just how hard those women had to work to even cast a vote. That part of the story was not covered. It wasn't like they just walked up and could vote in the first place that they showed up at. They had to work at it.
Yeah. And you know what? It's not fair. I mean, what happens, if you're disabled, you're an elder, maybe you don't know.
You don't have a car.
Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, car rental fees go up, or you're getting on a bus from one place to the other, and maybe it's difficult for you, mobility wise. And I think when this kind of thing happens too, it doesn't help us trying to get the youth involved. And I think this is, again, I'm always like, come on, as soon as you're 18. And I have a feeling that our youth now, as soon as they can vote, I think it's going to be one of the biggest changes in voting, because I think the youth are very woke compared. They're ready to go and do it. And
Absolutely.
I think they want to see changes. I know people trash the youth, and I'm like, don't do it.
Look at the Parkland students.
Exactly. You look at them and how they stand up. I get goosebumps when I even think about it, and I'm like, they're going to do it, and we need to make it as easy as possible for everyone that can vote to vote, and to make sure that people should be voting. It should be easy. This should be something that you're excited about, actually. This should, that feeling of patriotism, of pride of your country is like, hey, I get to vote. And even women, we haven't, it hasn't been that long that we've been allowed to vote, quite frankly. And we need to watch it. We need to stand up and vote as much. Yeah.
I think it's really, really odd that you can do your taxes online, and somehow all that seems to work. IRS seems to know who's supposed to, be paying taxes. They don't seem to lose track of that. And, but then when it comes to voting rights, suddenly we got to go back and do it by paper and snail mail and all the, inefficient manner possible. Whereas IRS works pretty well online. Why can't we vote online?
Well, that brings us into the part that I'm not even covering in our documentaries. I mean, I'm covering the laws that are happening right here in our country, but the whole Russian hacking thing and interference is absolutely real. And that's a whole other front that's going to affect this right now, that is affecting it.
why a lot of places are going back to the old traditional machines and things like that for voting. And
yeah, I hope so.
yeah.
Because the machines are being hacked. But just back to the midterms for a second. The reason this is so important right now is because we want people to get out and vote so that they can vote for all the congressional and the Senate candidates, and even their state legislature representatives are all up right now. And who gets in really determines the future of which way voting rights goes. So it's really important to get out, especially if you live in Florida. This issue that we're talking about, the disenfranchisement of the ex-felons, 1.5 million of them in Florida alone, there's an Amendment 4. So you want to vote yes for Amendment 4 that would re-enfranchise these returned citizens. And that will have a huge impact, I think, on the 2020 election.
Excellent. Well, I'm so glad you brought this to the forefront, and I thank you for that. We do want to know what led you into the world of producing and filmmaking.
Oh, good question. I don't know. I think we all just get, we just kind of get charged up when we're watching films and stories that resonate with us. And I just remember, as a young person, feeling those emotions that could come up from watching a story unfold on the screen. And I just thought, wow, I want to figure out how to do that one day.
Cool. For sure. Yeah. And you've covered so much ground. Now, South Africa, did you have a good time there?
Oh, yeah. South Africa was just another huge eye-opening experience. And, some of the highlights there were that we got to film in Nelson Mandela's prison cell of 27 years.
Wow.
They gave us the key and we went into his cell on Robben Island, and that was just kind of strikes you all through your body like, wow, this is like, I don't even know how to put it into words, but this is where, this great man wrote these books and, then became president when he got out. 27 years. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And actually, due to me working with Miss Oprah Winfrey on the productions there, I did get to meet him a few times, and his countenance just it just seemed like I was in the presence of a Buddha.
That's nice.
Just so grounded and clean and a loving being. So yeah, no, there were amazing times in South Africa and in KwaZulu-Natal, where you two have been, right?
Yeah, we lived there. We used to live in, we lived all over the place. It's just kind of like our travels. But we lived in, our last place was Port Elizabeth in Cape, the Eastern Cape. And,
beautiful.
Yeah, that was our last place. But we did live up in Greytown, which is up in KwaZulu-Natal. And we lived near, it was all near Durban, Margate, those areas as well. So yeah, we went everywhere in South Africa, and the history is so diverse and it's such a beautiful country, and the people, everybody has a different side of their beliefs. And it's just, Africa changes you. I believe that, when I was raised, mostly in Kenya and South Africa, and to me that is, I'm American, but it changes you. And once you go there, they always have that saying of, once you go to Africa, you'll keep going back. And I think that's very true. Did you feel that the first time you went there?
I did. I felt it, but then on the other hand, when I came back, I was in a way so appreciative of being back, because I love the beauty and the spirit of Africa, but they are, I felt, even behind us in certain ways of social progress.
Sure.
That was really heartbreaking to see. And as we take our freedoms in this country for granted, because Africa has gone through so much change so fast as it's being, jolted into the 21st century. crime is not exactly little there. There's a lot more crime than here. So, as a woman in America, I can go out my front door and go take a jog, or we can walk in the park with our dog, or we can sit outside at a Starbucks. And I was really surprised to see that you don't do that in Johannesburg.
Oh, no. Remember, Nancy, when we first got to South Africa, we lived in England for a little bit, and then it was like, was it the mid 80s that we got to South Africa? We're not good at dates on all that, but we were staying somewhere, and women, I mean, there were a lot of places that women were not allowed. What was that place we weren't allowed in? A restaurant?
The Union Hotel.
Yeah, we weren't allowed in.
I had no idea that women weren't allowed in hotel bar.
Yeah,
restaurant.
What year was that?
Oh gosh,
this was
1985, something like
that.
Yeah, and so I walked in with Lisa. We were going to have lunch, and because it was connected to a bar, all these men were in there, and there were no women. And I knew that the laws had just, that it changed, keeping Black people from being inside certain areas.
Yeah.
But the signs were still there, which is interesting to me. And I never saw any signs that said no women allowed. It just was you weren't allowed. And a waiter came over and had to explain to me I wasn't allowed in there. Could I leave? And I was just like, no, I'm not leaving. I'm going to have lunch, but they wouldn't serve us. And, when something happens like that to you, you really start to appreciate why things need to change. And, right now in this country, people that haven't maybe lived outside the country feel that we're safe from things like happening or going backwards. And obviously we are not. So it is really important that people get out and vote. And if for some reason they're not allowed to vote, they need to fight to be able to vote. Otherwise, we will be the ones that people look at and say, this is a backward country.
And if we can vote, we need to help those who cannot vote. But then look at Mr. Mead. He can't vote, and he's helping people vote. How many people he's helped? How many people now? He's amazing. Oh, it was.
I don't know. It must be thousands. But the day that we followed him to Tampa, he lives in Orlando, and he just would cover that state, going all kinds of places. And so that's why, the fact that when we filmed in November of 2016 during the presidential election, they hadn't yet accomplished getting Amendment 4 on the ballot, the referendum that's coming up this November. And they, in just a few months after we filmed with him, they got over 1 million signatures to place Amendment 4 on the Florida ballot, which is just a huge, huge, shining example of what you can do with a grassroots campaign to really make a difference.
Okay. Oh, you've got to tell everybody VUSI.
Oh, VUSI. Okay, so the name of our company is VUSI, V-U-S-I, Filmworks. And I actually, like you said, once you go to Africa, maybe a little bit of Africa stays in you. So it actually is my tip of the hat. Yeah, it is my nod to Africa. So VUSI is a Zulu word which means to uplift or to awaken. And it sometimes is given to the name of firstborn sons in Africa, like Vusi Makasela, if I'm saying his name right, the great South African musician.
That's I like that name. I like that name a lot. And
thank you.
Yeah, that's and it is about being woke.
Exactly. And so I'll give a shout out to and on that note, I'll give a shout out to a couple other great organizations that are working to woke people to vote. One of them is actually called Woke Vote, and they're based in Atlanta, and they're working to get out the vote and register people. You can check them online and follow them on social. And another group is, have you heard of Reverend Barber in North Carolina?
No.
Oh my gosh, Reverend Barber is just an amazing voice for civil rights. very charismatic, incredible speaker. And he's running what's called now the Poor People's Campaign, which is basically a reincarnation of the Poor People's Campaign that Martin Luther King and his associates started back in the 60s. And to people that are listening in North Carolina, you have a very, very important referendum on your ballot this November, which is a referendum that says, should people have to present a state-issued ID in order to cast a ballot in North Carolina?
Wow.
And voter ID laws are actually another form of voter suppression, particularly in more rural areas where some of the senior citizens in certain communities may not have even been born in hospitals with birth certificates, and maybe they don't drive anymore. So to have to present an ID, many people say that it's equivalent of a poll tax. You have to buy and pay a fee for that ID to vote. And it's not like these people just popped up out of the blue and said, I want to vote this year. They may have voted for decades and decades. And now all of a sudden, here's a voter ID law, which again is basically targeted at disenfranchising minority and economically challenged populations.
Yeah, I remember this starting up now. Yeah. And, and I remember talk of it on the last elections. And it kind of freaked me out a little bit in South Africa as soon as you were of age. And actually, most people did have this. You have to have an ID book. You have to have, and it was these little green books. And it's like with purple stamps on them. Anything you did, like even if, you couldn't open a library card without your little green book and your purple stamp from the library.
That's right.
You couldn't open a post office box. You couldn't, that was you. It felt like, that's where you start. I mean, it's like 1984, man.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
On you.
You had to carry them on you
at all times.
Right.
So that was,
which is why
it was an important thing for some things, but it really was where you just felt like you're being watched. And,
exactly.
I always had to have that kind of thing because we weren't citizens. And so it was always like, you're the immigrant. My whole life it's been that, oh, you're not from here. Who cares? But people were nice. So I want to make sure everyone knows that people were really, 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 really nice to us. But having that booklet, I remember even my friends, high school, and we're like, now we're being watched. And it just feels like you're a number. You're not a human being. Whereas you'd think, oh, you get an ID book. This is all about me. No, it's not. It's just this weird controlling feeling of having to have that book. And I just,
there has to be some kind of system.
Yeah.
I understand that. But it is interesting when you start to think back to this country, who benefits from having a number of minorities not be able to vote? Who's behind that? Who wants that to happen, and why?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
give you a list?
yeah. Without getting too political, I mean, the power base in this country has basically been from, wealthy white landowners, and now corporations, which we say have, according to those recent laws that said that corporations are like people and they have rights too. So, it really will change the power structure. I mean, like, let's just take this recent tax cut for the wealthy that Trump just passed.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's like, if you want to keep those, certain people are getting millions back on their taxes now. So that, if they want that to happen, then they have to keep that power base in, because they don't want to have their tax dollars taken away to go towards universal health care or any kind of services.
And if you follow that line of reasoning, you realize the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Eventually, it's called revolution, and it gets violent. And, so I always look at the echelon of rich people that are pulling the strings. I hope they come to your house first.
Oh, nice, Nancy. Here we go. Here we go.
Well, because,
here we go.
That's the cause
but
of it.
The true thing is, the more power we can have in votes, that's the key thing. That's the way, that's the root, is getting those who cannot vote to be able to vote.
That's the
and
peaceful way of
that's
running
a peaceful way of
country.
doing this. And
Yes.
so, and it is, we can, if we all work together to do it. And again, go to letmypeoplevotemovie.com, and she's got some great links and articles up there as well. And to share it with your friends. That's, the good thing about social media. There's some negatives, but the good thing is we can all connect together in those ways as well. Gilda, we want to thank you for joining us. It has been such a good conversation, and we hope you keep in touch and let us know about your different projects as they come up. But we want to also give a shout out to the National Parks Arts Foundation, who is sponsoring today's episode. The National Parks Arts Foundation, they rock. They create unique artist in residence programs in park units across the country. You could be staying on a remote island, Loggerhead Key in Dry Tortugas. You could be at Chaco Canyon, Aztec Ruins. There's Gettysburg, Big Bend National Park, Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. I mean, it goes on and on, these places, and there's always new parks on board. And so any kind of artist, whether you're a photographer, a filmmaker, a writer, a poet, they also have a program just for artists who are veterans, military veterans. You can apply, and if you get awarded the residency, you get to stay in that park unit that you submitted for a full month to create, which is amazing.
I love it.
It is amazing, some of the things that have come out of it. I know Big Bend, there was a filmmaker, Gilda, that went and ended up doing a whole TV series that went global. So there's things like sometimes if it's your art, it may end up in the National Park the National Park Service art libraries. So there's all of these amazing things that come out of this. We've been interviewing artists every month, the first Friday of every month here on Big Blend Radio, and it's just incredible. We've had poets on, we've had dancers, musicians, all kinds of artists do apply. So I wanted to ask you, Gilda, would you stay in a park for a month to just work on a film?
Heck yes.
Yeah. All right.
I got to look at the list. I mean, listen, I share your love of our national parks, which is another reason to vote.
Exactly.
Put it all full circle, because national parks, national monuments, sacred First Nations places are now being, right now are being taken away by this administration. And we need to have our vote, and we need to raise our voice about those things too. Other great, organizations working in that space are, of course, the Sierra Club, the National Parks Foundations, and the NRDC, National Resources Defense Council. They are all very vocal about that. So, yes, I mean, our national parks are sacred.
National Parks Conservation Association, that's what, we did so many interviews on issues facing our parks, like the Four Corners being polluted by the Navajo Generation, things like that. And we started realizing how many issues our parks face. And our parks are connected to gateway communities. So if a park is polluted, your town is going to be polluted. If a town is polluted, the park is going to be polluted. So, and we're talking about historic places. You're talking about Selma. Selma is part of a National Historic Trail. Also, Birmingham is the whole downtown area. It is a civil rights monument. It's like a whole district dedicated to civil rights history is part of our National Park Service as well. So we've got historic sites. In fact, 3/4 of our National Park Service is historic. So there you go.
Exactly.
Very
and
cool.
One of my first jobs out of, well, actually it was between college semesters, I was a National Park seasonal.
Wow. Cool. Well, right on. I love this.
Yeah, I had a Smokey Bear hat, and I told people the story of the shot heard around the world at the Minuteman Bridge in Concord, Massachusetts.
Cool. Wow. Who knew? This is so cool. So she's always been telling stories and getting people and getting people woke. That's your new name. Getting people woke Gilda. That's it.
I love that.
I love it.
Thank you.
Well, Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Don't forget, you can listen to Big Blend Radio. We air Sunday through Friday. Just go to bigblendradio.com. You listen to shows as they go live, or you can listen anytime on demand. Again, letmypeoplevotemovie.com is where to go to get a screening. Get it in your community centers, in your schools, in your universities. Get woke. That's the thing to do. We're going to play a song to close us off. It's one of our favorite songs by Makana over in Hawaii. Makana is one of the top 10 black key guitar players in the world. You can go to his website, makanamusic.com. And this is We Are the Many, and it is off of his album, Ripe. Thanks so much for joining us, Gilda.
Thank you, Gilda.
Thank you. You are amazing women. Oh my goodness. It's like talking to some encyclopedias with big hearts.
Oh,
you know so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Here it is.
Come here, gather round the stage. The time has come for us to voice our rage against the ones who've trapped us in a cage, to steal from us the value of our wage. From underneath the vestiture of law, the lobbyists at Washington do gnaw. At liberty, the bureaucrats guffaw. And until they are purged, we won't withdraw. We'll occupy the streets, we'll occupy the courts, we'll occupy the offices of you, till you do the bidding of the many, not the few. Our nation was built upon the right of every person to improve their plight. But the laws of this republic they rewrite, and now a few own everything in sight. They own it free of liability. They own that they are not like you and me. Their influence dictates legality, and until they are stopped, we are not free. We'll occupy the streets, we'll occupy the courts, we'll occupy the offices of you, till you do the bidding of the many, not the few. You enforce your monopolies with guns, while sacrificing our daughters and sons. But certain things belong to everyone. Your thievery has left the people none. So take heed of our notice to redress. We had little to lose, we must confess. Your empty words do leave us unimpressed. The growing number join us in protest. We occupy the streets, we occupy the courts, we occupy the offices of you, till you do the bidding of the many, not the few. You can't divide us into sides, and from our gaze you cannot hide. Denial serves to amplify, and our allegiance you can't buy. Our government is not for sale. The banks do not deserve a bail. We will not reward those who fail. We will not move till we prevail. We'll occupy the streets, we'll occupy the courts, we'll occupy the offices of you till you do the bidding of the many, not the few. We'll occupy the streets, we'll occupy the courts, we'll occupy the offices of you till you do the bidding of the many, not the few. We are the many, you are the few.